Was it the photographer, Henri Cartier-Bresson that said back in, what was it, the 50s or 60s, there's too many photos in the world today? That was true then, but now there's way too many words in the world. Thank you, AI. In today's modern world of AI and of storytelling and all this stuff, there's far, far, far too many words in the world. But there's not enough words for people to actually describe an original thought. And I think that's where we're at with AI today, especially in the traditions of storytelling and of learning how to speak, with clarity and with identity and with genuine affection for the human spirit. AI is capable of writing thousands of words per second, per minute, whatever, right? AI is not capable of creating an original thought and putting that into a cohesive story that actually truly entertains. And I know that there's people out there, especially people from, say, India or Vietnam or something, who really depend on this work, this AI work, this AI writing work and prompting and stuff, who would very well disagree with me. But the problem with AI is not capable of creating an original thought. Therefore, the people who are writing end up sounding just like clones of everybody else because AI is trained off of what exists. Now this is the challenge for a storyteller and for a writer, is that once you put this stuff out there, I mean, the second you put this out there, somebody is going to get it. They're going to train AI on your words, your original thought, and it's out there for everyone to have. And then if you go and you say, write in the style of Matt Pierce and this work by Matt Pierce, somebody who really thinks my writing is worthy of that will begin sounding a lot like me every single day. So the challenge for us as a writer and as a storyteller is to continually challenge the original thought and to continue to look for the original thought. Uh, AI is incredibly good these days at writing, but it's incredibly horrible at creating an original thought. Something else AI is incredibly bad at, if you really look at this, is storytelling. AI can tell you the most generic story. It can write you something like a Harry Potter type fiction or a Chronicles of Narnia type thing or something, or it can copy The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or it can copy, something by, like, say, Richard Riordan. It can copy that. It can mimic that. It can sound a lot like that. But what made these books very unique was that the writers were capable of an original thought. They could put this together in words and they could type this out in original thought. And because we're so trapped by the video and by the movie and by the television and by the screen, that is preventing us from thinking an original thought. And this goes much deeper than just writing. Obviously, I'm here in Texas, and I write a lot about Texas, and I talk a lot about Texas. Um, Today is like August, I don't know, August 17th when I'm recording this, something like that. And just recently, I saw where Governor Greg Abbott here in Texas wanted to further limit screen time in the classroom. I think that's a good idea. I don't think it's a bad idea, and I'm not a huge Greg Abbott fan. I think for the most part, he's a dimwit uh, who you can't trust. And that's saying it is a legitimate Texan, like somebody who knows Texas a lot. You can't trust this bastard. Um, but I think he goes to prove that even an idiot can have a good idea once a day. I mean, a clock can be right once a day. But um, on the flip side of that, I think his idea of limiting screen time is good. but it's how you limit that screen time, right? Are we going to allow these kids room to think, room to grow, or are we just going to stay with the industrial education model of the bell schedule and all this and that? Um, I think he wants to bring in classical education to the forefront, as we should. We should, man. Let me tell you something. Parents should be teaching classical education, but the problem is the parents aren't smart enough to teach classical education. The parents don't know enough. Like if you look at some of these homeschool parents, they're not smart enough to be teaching classical education. They don't know the first tenets of classical education. They think they do, and they can tell you all about it, but they can't really delve deep into like uh, Marcus Aurelius or Justice, or they can't dive really deep into Homer's Odyssey. They can tell you about it, and but I don't know how many of them. My question to this is how many of them have been trained to classically think uh, deeply. I mean, deeply about the lessons that are learned from there and the knowledge that we can get from, say, Aurelius, or from, say, Brave New World. That was a great book. If you ever got a chance to read uh, Huxley Brave New World, if you read this and think critically about these things, that's hugely important. AI can now write in that style. But going back to this concept of AI can write in that style, but AI cannot do what these writers did, and that's create an original thought. The classical education movement, the people leading current classical education, especially at the elementary level, are not capable of creating a coherent, deep thought because they weren't trained that way. And even if they did go to a liberal arts college, maybe they didn't delve far enough into this. And this is getting way off topic, but they didn't delve way into the concept of thinking critically. So I think one of the big issues is finding the original thought. How do you do that? How do you find the original thought? You have to think. I mean, you have to not look at a screen. You have to not listen to an audiobook. You have to actually think, use your mind for something other than a hat rack, you know? Um, you have to really go in and explore and look at these books as a brave new world that says, you know what, there may be something in here that's going to change my mind completely. It's going to challenge everything that I believe. And how do I interpret that? You cannot do that in 30 minutes. You cannot do that in an hour. You cannot do that in a day. This requires sitting in a room alone by yourself, embracing the silence and the loneliness to think. Distractions be damned. And that's where the original thought exists. So while I think writing is dying, I don't think great writing is dying. I think great writing is being covered up by bad AI writing and bad thought leadership, because we live in a world where everybody's a goddamn thought leader these days. At least they claim they are, but they can't claim an original thought and convey that original thought. They can't story tell that original thought to us because their brains over the past 45 years, for the most part, have been constrained to this bell schedule, to this industrialized education system, to this institution of being entertained with everything. Sometimes entertainment and education are two very different things. And it's in that education that the original thought process comes that leads to the entertainment. So go think an original thought. Don't just repeat what somebody else tells you. That's where the world is failing. That's where we just become a culture of Pete, and repeat. What we need is a culture of thought leaders, people who think wide for themselves and think original thoughts. That's important. So, my name is Matt. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. I would really appreciate it. Become part of the movement, become part of the community. We'll see you soon.